Hi, my name is Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would look at all of my DNFs in 2024. So in 2024 I read 127 books, which I finished, and I DNF'd 48 books. So my DNF rate for 2024 was 27%, which is actually slightly lower than it usually is. So for the last 2 years my DNF rate has been about 32-33%, so slightly lower in 2024. But still 48 books DNF'd. So I thought I'd run through them. Some of them I think I'll remember why I DNF'd them, some of them I may not. Storygraph, my Storygraph is always linked in the description box below, so you can go find me on Storygraph. So in Storygraph it has the 2024 reading wrap up, and you can see all your DNFs in there. So I think these are ordered. No, they're not. I don't know what order they're in. I thought they were alphabetical, but the second one down, the surname starts with a W, so I don't know what order these are in. They're in Storygraph's order. So we'll just go through them. We have Nevermind by Edwin St. Aubyn. This is the first Patrick Melrose novel. So this is the first in a series of novels, which I believe is semi-autobiographical. And I think it's like won awards and stuff. It's quite sort of well renowned. So the first book follows this character as a child and his family, but the reason I DNF'd it was because there is some very disturbing stuff in this book, like very disturbing. So it was too much for me to read. Next is The Family Fang by Kevin Wilson. I only read a few pages. This was incredibly offensive, so I DNF'd it. Death at the Sign of the Rook by Kate Atkinson. So this is one of the Jackson Brodie novels, which is like a crime mystery series. I've read, I think, at least one of them before. And the reason I picked this up, it was in December, because it sells itself as being a cosy murder mystery. I think it even references Agatha Christie on the dust jacket. And yeah, it was selling itself as being like a cosy, closed circle murder mystery. And I read, I think, almost half, and it just was not that at all. Like, there was nothing wrong with the book in itself. We were following, there was a lot of like character stuff. There wasn't a lot of plot. It didn't really feel like there was a closed circle. It bore no resemblance to Agatha Christie. It just wasn't what I had expected it to be. So that was why I DNF'd it, because I just wasn't in the mood for it. Next is Death Song by Jürgen Brecher, which is it it's some sort of Scandi noir. I'm not even sure what country that is from. Why did I DNF it? It was probably a bit gory, but I don't remember. Next is Fear Stalks the Village by Ethel Lena White, which is one of the British Library crime classics. So I remember DNFing this. It's about a village which experiences a series of poison pen letters that get sent to the residents. And I DNF'd it because there was just a lot of characters thrown at you really early on, and I had no idea who anyone was, and I just couldn't follow it. It's one I might go back to in future, because I do really like the British Library Crime Classics series. Next is Duplicate Death by Georgette Heyer. I do like Georgette Heyer's murder mysteries, so I can't remember what my issue with this one was. Next is Little Rot by Akwaeke Emezi. So I have really enjoyed other Akwaeke Emezi books. However, Little Rot is quite dark, quite gritty, quite disturbing, and once I started to come to realise that it was kind of going to go those places, I decided it was just going to be too much for me. Next is quite a controversial one, but probably not the most controversial one on this list. Becky Chambers' The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. This was a shame because it's like queer sci-fi. I was like, yeah, it might be for me. It was just quite slow paced. There wasn't a lot of plot. Very character focused, and so I just wasn't compelled to keep reading. The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. Now, I have read and enjoyed Lucy Foley before. I think I was a little bit bored by this one, if I remember rightly. A Flat Place by Noreen Masood. This is non-fiction. This was on the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction long list. I started listening to the audiobook and I quite enjoyed it. So I liked how the author was making the comparisons between like geographical flatness and like depression. I thought that was really interesting. I think partly because I was listening to it on audio, and this does happen quite a lot when I listen to audio, I just like lost interest, didn't listen to it for a few days, and then just never went back to it. The Double Shadow by Sally Gardner. This was a book that was on my shelf randomly. It's a YA fantasy. I don't remember anything about it, so I probably didn't read very much, and it probably just wasn't for me. The Maiden by Kate Foster. This was on the Women's Prize long list last year. Did it make the short list? I don't think it did. Historical fiction, mysterious. To be honest, the kind of thing I might normally like. I think I just found it a bit boring. The Discomfort of Evening by Lucas Reinveld. So this won the International Booker a few years ago. This had been sitting on my shelf for a while, and I made it like really far through the book, where it's a very disturbing book, it's a gross book, and it got to the point where it really was too much for me. Okay, The Drowning Hour by S.K. Tremaine. So this is murder mystery, psychological thriller. I have read and enjoyed other books by S.K. Tremaine, so I can't remember. I actually can't remember picking this up. Can't remember what I didn't like about it. Don't know. Hell and Death by Oscar Jensen, which is another murder mystery. I don't think I read very much of that one either. Slightly controversial. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I read quite a lot. I read at least half of this book. I have read The Martian and enjoyed it. And Project Hail Mary, like I didn't hate it, but I was just a bit bored and wasn't compelled to keep reading. I know a lot of people really love that book. Next is How to Be Both by Ali Smith. So I have read a couple of Ali Smith novels like years ago, before the hype, and then not picked anything up since the hype. But I had this on my shelf, so I thought I'll give it a go. And I think I've decided Ali Smith is just not for me. I think her writing, I just don't get on with it. I don't get it. She's just not for me. Next was My Friends by Hisham Matar, which was on the Booker long list in 2024. I don't think there was anything wrong with this. I think I read a couple of chapters and just wasn't too interested. So I didn't sort of push myself to keep reading. So I didn't hate it or anything, but it just wasn't immediately compelling to me. The Guest by Emma Cline. So this is a thriller, and I think it's had quite a lot of praise, but if I remember rightly, I didn't find it very thrilling. I can't remember how much I read, but yeah, I don't think I found it very thrilling. The Last Passenger by Will Dean. So I do remember this one. So this is about a woman who is on a cruise with her partner, and one morning while on the cruise she wakes up and everyone has disappeared. Her partner's gone, the other passengers have gone, the crew's disappeared. The reason I picked this up is because I heard there was a twist early on, or a reveal early on, and there is. I'm not going to spoil anything. And the plot, I think, was somewhat ridiculous. But that wasn't why I DNF'd it, because I don't really mind a ridiculous plot. I thought the writing was awful, and I have DNF'd another Will Dean book in the past, I think for the same reason. And like, it's not just that I don't like his writing. To me, I feel like his writing is really bad, but clearly he's a very popular author, so I guess I'm wrong. But yeah, no. Next is The Bookseller of Kabul by Asna Sayestad. This is non-fiction, and I was reading this for my library book club. So why did I DNF? It's about it's about someone who goes and spends like a year living with this bookseller and his family in Kabul. And I think I'd started, it's probably not my kind of thing anyway, like I don't read a lot of non-fiction, but I think I'd started reading this, but then I'd read something online that I think the wife of the guy who the author stays with had ended up like suing the author for misrepresenting the family story or something, and so that sort of like put me off a little bit, and I probably, to be fair, didn't need much pushing to DNF it. Next, oh actually I have a copy of this. It's The Seven Moons of Marley Almeida by Shihan Kurun Atalaka. This won the Booker in 2022. I didn't read too much of this. Like, I think it sounds like a really interesting concept. So I think a man dies, but then he has 7 moons to work out what's happened or something. Anyway, the concept sounds really interesting, but I found myself getting lost with the different characters, and also there was a lot of mention of penises. Next is The Idiot by Elif Batterman, which, to be honest, is probably one I would try again. This is quite a long book, and it's set in a college, and I think when I picked it up I realised I just wasn't in the mood for it, but it is a book I would like to try again in future. Sarah Canary by Karen Joy Fowler. I've read and enjoyed other books by Karen Joy Fowler. This one, I think, was one of her earlier ones. It's historical fiction. And yeah, it's sort of a bit of an adventure story, and I think I just couldn't get into it. The Anomaly by Michael Rutger is a like thriller horror novel. I DNF'd that one because it was very like male. Very like, the male characters were very manly, and I just didn't like it. Another one I have is The Little Sparrow Murders by Seishi Yokomizo. This was a shame because, well, I really like the Honjin murders by this author, but I think I've read others and not enjoyed them as much. And in this one, I think I just got really confused with the characters and struggled to follow who was who and what was going on. Next is another one that I do want to revisit in future, and it's Hummingbird Salamander by Jeff Vandermeer. So I've read the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer. I do have the latest one in that series. Is it Absolution on this library card? This is just a library card now. So yeah, I have enjoyed Jeff Vandermeer. Hummingbird Salamander, it was very weird, and I remember thinking I really want to try and like persevere with it, but I just didn't have the like mental capacity to do so at the time, so I would like to revisit that in the future. Winterset Hollow by Jonathan Edward Durham. This is a horror novel, and it features these, so it's about these people who, when they were younger, these like 3 group of friends, they really liked this, was it a series of books called Winterset Hollow, which featured these animal creatures, like anthropomorphic, is that the word? And then, but then in the present day and in real life, they stumble across these actual like creatures in the woods, and I think I just don't like those sort of like animal-y characters, and it had like, even though it's horror, it had like an element of whimsy to it that I just didn't really like. The Mystery of Henri Pic by David Fernkinos. That one's one I'd been meaning to read for a while. It's a mystery. It's quite light-hearted. Was it because, I feel like it may have been because there was like just male characters I didn't like. I'm not 100% sure. Next is Out There Screaming, which is a horror anthology edited by Jordan Peele. And I did enjoy some of the stories in there, but then there was just a run of several stories that I just wasn't too keen on, so I ended up DNFing it and taking it back to the library. My Brother Michael by Mary Stewart. This was a random library pick. I think this was first published in maybe the 50s and recently been reissued. I I don't remember hating it, so I probably only read a little bit and decided it either wasn't for me or I wasn't in the mood for it. Next one is kind of surprising, The Plague Court Murders by Carter Dixon, aka John Dixon Carr, one of my favourite Golden Age crime writers. So I think in this one there was a lot of characters. So this is, as you might have noticed, one of the most common reasons why I DNF, particularly in mystery novels actually, if there's a lot of characters and I can't keep track of who is who, to the point where even when interesting stuff starts to happen in the plot, because I literally don't know who these people are from each other, it doesn't really mean anything to me. So I think that was the reason I DNF'd that one. A Death in Tokyo by Keigo Higashino, who this is a Japanese murder mystery. I have read and enjoyed books by Keigo Higashino before. I think this one just didn't grip me, if I remember rightly, sadly. Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. Yeah, I've remembered now why I DNF Night Bitch. So this is about a woman who starts to feel like she's turning into a dog, like a feral dog. And the family have a cat. And I started to be very worried for the cat, which is why I DNF'd that one. Orbital by Samantha Harvey, won the Booker Prize. To be honest, so I think Orbital had kind of been on my radar before it was Booker nominated anyway, something I was maybe interested in. And when I did pick it up then last year, I only read a couple of pages before deciding I wasn't in the mood for it. I think I could potentially be in the mood for it another time. I know it's very sort of introspective, very low on plot, but I'm kind of still interested in it. So that is one that I might go back to. Devil House by John Darney L. is a horror novel which I wanted to read for a while. I can't remember why. Why did I DNF it? I probably just couldn't get into it. I don't think I read very much of it, if I remember rightly. The Persian Boy by Mary Renault. This is historical fiction about Alexander the Great. I was meant to read this for my work book club. This is basically the epitome of a not me book. So I think historical fiction about real characters, and just this time period, it was just very much outside my comfort zone. I did give it a go, but I just could not force myself to keep reading it. I can't make myself keep reading a book if I'm not enjoying it. Like, I just can't do it. The Bad Girl by Mario Vargas Llosa, who I think is he from Argentina maybe? This is like I thought it was a crime novel, but it tells me it's contemporary romance. I feel like I feel like there is some sort of crime mystery in there. I feel like, I don't know if this was a bit too much of a manly novel maybe. I can't remember. Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is a shame. Sci-fi, fantasy, queer. I mean, it's not a genre I read at all, really. So it probably was never quite going to be for me. And it was actually really like the tone of the book that I didn't quite gel with and that I decided to DNF. The Virgin and the Gypsy by D.H. Lawrence is a very, very small... Oh, is this the last one? This might be the last one. No, it's not the last one, Jennifer. My phone just froze. The Virgin and the Gypsy by D.H. Lawrence is a tiny little book. I DNF'd that one. I think it was a little bit icky, if I remember rightly. Commonwealth by Anne Patchett. I've wanted to read for a while. Why didn't I like it? I think I maybe was a bit bored by it. Tentacle by Rita Indiana, which is speculative. I think I just struggled to get into it. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I was reading this for my library book club and it was boring. Murder on the Christmas Express by Alexandra Benedict. So I picked this up in December, just gone. And like, I thought it was going to be a cosy murder mystery. It came apparent very early on that it was a lot darker than that, so I was not in the mood for that. This is the most controversial DNF, James by Percival Everett. I didn't dislike it, and I thought what it was saying about the power of language was really interesting, but I just didn't feel compelled to keep reading. I'm sorry. The Disappearance of Signora Giulia by Piero Chiara. I think that was an Italian mystery novel. Why did I DNF that one? Can't entirely remember why I DNF'd that one. I feel like it might have been, again, because it was a bit too masculine, if that makes sense. Next is another one that for some reason has not left the house. Oh, we are nearly at the end. This is Granta's Best of Young British Novelists 4 from spring 2013. So they bring out one of these, I believe, every 10 years, featuring who they deem to be the best up-and-coming young British novelists. And this is a sample of their work. So when I got this secondhand, and I had thought this was short stories. Now, some of this is short stories, but it's also just excerpts from longer pieces, which of course makes sense because not all writers write short stories. So that does make sense. But once I realised that was the case, I'm not sure how useful it is to just read excerpts of longer pieces. So I DNF'd that. And the final one on the list is The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak, which I have read before and I did really enjoy. I was rereading this with my library book club, and so a couple of us had read it before and thought we'd order it in for the group because it might be a good one for us to read. Now, the reason I DNF'd this one was because I just wasn't in the mood for it at the time. I was reading it at the time that all the riots was going on here, and I just wasn't in the mood to read about Nazis. I actually don't think, did any of us finish it that time around? I'm not sure if we did, but I think that was definitely just down to other stuff that was going on that was affecting our reading. So those are all my DNFs. I'm quite tired now. Yeah, so interesting. There are some books there by authors I've read from and really enjoyed. So that's all of the books that I DNF'd in 2024. Please let me know how many books you DNF'd in 2024. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Bye.